They sent their best ships against us, Commander Vax said, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he addressed the Galactic Council. 7,000 warships. The pride of the Dominion. And do you know what the humans called it? The council members leaned forward in their anti-gravity seats, their varied anatomies tense with anticipation. Vax's mouth tentacles curled into what his species considered a grimace. Target practice. The chamber erupted in disbelieving murmurs. Impossible. Preposterous. The human territories are barely 3 systems wide. Vax slammed his appendage on the podium. I was there. I saw it with all 4 of my eyes, and I'm the only surviving officer who can tell you what really happened. The Supreme Counselor, Zorix, raised a scaled hand for silence. Commander Vax, please continue your testimony. The Council requires a full accounting of the incident. Incident? Vax nearly choked on his breathing apparatus. Is that what we are calling the complete annihilation of our greatest military fleet? An incident? Your objection is noted, Commander. Now proceed. Vax straightened his uniform, the medals and insignias of his once proud position now feeling like dead weight. Very well. It began 3 lunar cycles ago when High Command decided that humans had expanded far enough. Fleet Admiral Duzak stood on the command bridge of the inevitable Conquest, the flagship of the Dominion's 3rd Armada. His gray skin shimmered under the ambient lighting as he surveyed the holographic display showing thousands of warships assembled in perfect formation. Magnificent, isn't it, Commander Vax? Duzak said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the Dominion. I nodded respectfully, though inside I questioned the necessity of such overwhelming force. Indeed, Admiral, 7,000 ships to subdue a species that only achieved faster-than-light travel 8 decades ago. Admiral Duzak turned to me, his head crest flaring slightly in annoyance. You sound concerned, Commander. Do not be fooled by the humans' primitive appearance. Intelligence reports indicate they are unpredictable. Unpredictable hardly warrants our greatest fleet, I replied. You aren't at the diplomatic summit on Proxima Centauri, Duzak said, his voice dropping. Their ambassador actually laughed when presented with our terms of surrender. Laughed? Then suggested we should think very carefully about our next move. Lieutenant Garvik approached with a datapad. Admiral, all ships report ready for jump sequence. The Human Defense Network remains unaware of our approach. Excellent, Duzak said. Begin the countdown. I want to arrive with the entire fleet simultaneously. The psychological impact alone should secure their immediate capitulation. I checked my own terminal, reviewing the intelligence once more. Admiral, with respect, something doesn't add up. The humans have minimal orbital defenses around their colonies. Their military vessels are few and outdated by our standards, yet they show no fear. That's precisely why we are here with overwhelming force, Commander. To show them they should be afraid. Duzak's mouth tentacles curved into a smug expression. The Dominion has conquered 37 species. Humans will be 38. Jump sequence initiating in 30 units, announced the ship's AI. I couldn't shake my unease. Admiral, perhaps we should send a smaller force first, test the defenses before committing our entire fleet, Duzak laughed. And risk giving them time to prepare? No, the Dominion strategy has always been decisive force applied at once. We will darken their skies with our ships. They will surrender before we fire a single shot. 20 units to jump. The AI continued. Lieutenant Garvik looked up from his station. Sir, our intelligence just intercepted an unusual transmission from human space. What kind of transmission? Duzak asked. It appears to be music, and a message repeating on all frequencies. Let's hear it, Duzak ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a rhythmic human song began playing. Over it a calm human voice spoke. Attention approaching Dominion fleet. We have been expecting you. Please be advised that you are entering restricted space. For your own safety, we recommend immediate retreat. This is your only warning. Have a nice day. Silence fell across the bridge. How did they know we were coming? Garvik whispered. Duzak's crest flattened against his head. Irrelevant. They are bluffing. No adjustment to our plans. 10 units to jump, the AI announced. I turned to Duzak. Admiral, they knew our exact approach vector. This suggests It suggests nothing except perhaps a lucky guess or a traitor in our ranks, Duzak interrupted. The battle plan remains unchanged. 5 units. All ships prepare for immediate combat deployment upon arrival. Duzak ordered through the fleet-wide channel. Victory for the Dominion. 3, 2, 1. Initiating jump. Reality twisted around us as 7,000 ships simultaneously tore holes in space-time, propelling us across vast distances in an instant. The jump drives were calibrated for precision, designed to position our fleet in a perfect siege formation around Earth and its primary colonies. The view screens adjusted as we emerged from jump space, expecting to show the blue-green world of humanity's homeworld. Instead, we saw stars, empty space, no planet. Navigation! Report, Duzak bellowed. Where is Earth? The navigation officer frantically checked his instruments. Sir, coordinates are correct. We are exactly where Earth should be. That's impossible. A planet doesn't just move. Lieutenant Garvik's voice shook as he reported, Admiral, fleet sensors detecting multiple small objects approaching at high velocity from all directions. Show me, Duzak demanded. The holographic display updated to show thousands of small, crude-looking metal objects hurtling toward our fleet. I frowned at the readings. They are primitive, barely more than metal casings with propulsion systems. No energy signatures, minimal guidance systems. Duzak relaxed visibly. Is this their defense? Glorified space rocks? Target and destroy them. Sir, Garvik continued, his voice higher than normal. There are tens of thousands of them, and they are accelerating. Before Duzak could respond, the first of the objects reached the outer ships of our formation. We expected explosions, perhaps some minor damage to our shields. What happened instead defied explanation. The objects didn't explode. They unfolded. Like mechanical flowers blooming in space, they transformed upon proximity to our ships, extending appendages that latched onto hulls. Within seconds, they began drilling. What in the 7 moons is that? Duzak whispered. Sir, reports coming in from across the fleet. The devices are penetrating our shields as if they weren't there. They are drilling through hull plating and releasing something inside the ships. The comm system erupted with panicked reports. This is the relentless victory. Unknown contaminants spreading through decks 3 through 7. Glorious conquest. Reporting. Our systems are shutting down. Engineering reports microscopic machines in the circuitry. This is help. They are in the life support. One by one, ship signals began going dark. Nanomachines. I realized aloud, the objects are delivery systems for nanomachines programmed to disable our ships. Duzak stood frozen, watching as his perfect formation began to break apart, ships drifting powerless or frantically trying to evade the approaching cloud of devices. All ships. Evasive maneuvers, he finally ordered. Target those devices with all available weapons. But it was too late. Our tightly packed formation, designed to intimidate, had become our weakness. The devices were among us, attaching to ship after ship. Admiral, I said urgently, we need to retreat and regroup. Retreat? The Dominion does not retreat, Duzak roared, though I could see the fear in his eyes. Suddenly our own lights flickered. Sir, we have been breached. Nanomachines detected in sections 12 through 20, reported the security officer. Duzak finally seemed to grasp the severity of our situation. Prepare for emergency jump. All functioning ships. Follow. He was interrupted by a new voice coming through on all communication channels. Hello, Dominion Fleet. Captain Sam Foster of the Earth Defense Force here. I see you have met our welcome party. Impressive, aren't they? We call them locusts. Small, simple, devastating in swarms, just like the insects they are named after. The human's voice was casual, almost friendly. Now I understand there's been a misunderstanding. You came looking for Earth, but we moved it. Temporarily. Just shifted the gravitational signature a bit. Old trick, but effective. Duzak grabbed the communication system. This is Fleet Admiral Duzak of the Dominion. What you are doing is an act of war. A laugh came through the speakers. An act of war. That's rich, coming from the fleet that just tried to surround our homeworld. But listen, we are reasonable folks. Your ships that have been disabled are simply that. Disabled. No permanent damage, no loss of life. Consider it a timeout. Where are you? Duzak demanded. Show yourself. Oh, I'm not actually in your vicinity. This is a recorded message with some basic conversational algorithms. Our actual response fleet is still about 20 minutes out. The locusts are just our automated defense system. Think of them as our burglar alarm. I checked our sensors, desperately trying to locate the source of the transmission or any approaching human ships. Nothing. You see, the human's voice continued, we have been watching the Dominion for some time. 37 species conquered, all with the same strategy. Overwhelming force, shock and awe, immediate demand for surrender. Very predictable, actually. More ship signals were going dark across our fleet. The nanomachines were spreading faster than we could track them. For what it's worth, the human said, most of your ships will regain minimal functionality in about 6 hours. Life support will remain operational throughout. We are not monsters after all. Duzak was shaking with rage. You think this is over? This is merely one fleet? The Dominion will send 10 times this number. We will burn your worlds to ash. About that, the human replied as if anticipating this very threat. You might want to check in with your homeworld before making promises you can't keep. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Admiral, we should attempt to contact High Command. Duzak hesitated, then nodded. Open a quantum channel to Central Command. Our communications officer tried repeatedly, growing more frantic with each attempt. Sir, I can't establish a connection. The quantum network it's not there. That's impossible. The quantum network is unbreakable. The human voice chimed in again. Not unbreakable, just really, really difficult to disrupt. Unless, of course, you have access to the original blueprints. You folks really should be more careful about where you leave your technical data. Duzak collapsed into his command chair. What have you done? Nothing permanent. Your central worlds are experiencing a communications blackout and some administrative difficulties. They'll be quite busy for the next few standard months. Too busy to send another fleet, I'm afraid. I watched the tactical display as more of our ships went dark, drifting lifelessly in space. In less than 20 minutes, the greatest fleet in Dominion history had been rendered largely impotent, without the humans firing a single conventional weapon. Now then, the human continued, in about 18 minutes, a small contingent of our ships will arrive to escort functional Dominion vessels to a safe distance from our territory. Any ships that attempt aggressive action will be, well, let's just say the Locust were the polite option. Duzak's head crest lay completely flat against his skull, a sign of total submission in our species. How? He whispered. How did a primitive species prepare for this? As if in answer, the human's tone became more serious. Admiral Duzak, yes, we know who you are. Humanity has a long history of being underestimated. We have fought ourselves far more viciously than you have fought others. Every weapon you could imagine we have already used on ourselves. Every strategy, every tactic, tested and refined through thousands of years of conflict. There was a pause before the voice continued. When we achieved space travel and realized we weren't alone, we didn't celebrate for long. We looked at our history and asked ourselves, what if everyone out there is like us? What if they are worse? So we watched, we listened, and we prepared. Lieutenant Garvik approached, his voice low. Sir, engineering reports all weapon systems are offline. Life support is stable, but everything else is shutting down. The nanomachines appear to be programmed to disable rather than destroy. The Admiral didn't respond, still staring at the communication system. Oh, and Admiral, the human's voice came again. When you report back, and yes, some of you will be allowed to report back, tell your leaders this: Earth is not available for conquest. Neither are our colonies. Consider this sector of space off limits. The message ended, leaving only the strange human music playing softly through our speakers. I looked at the devastation around us. Our mighty ships, pinnacles of Dominion technology, now drifting helplessly in space. No casualties reported yet, but our military power had been neutralized more completely than if the humans had simply destroyed us. Commander Vax Admiral Duzak finally spoke, his voice hollow. Prepare a log of everything that has occurred. When our systems are restored, I want a complete record transmitted to High Command. Yes, Admiral, I replied. And Vax? Yes, sir. Duzak turned to me, all four of his eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting of our once proud bridge. When the humans arrive, We will not resist. And that was just the beginning, Vax told the stunned Galactic Council. 16 minutes later, just three human vessels arrived. They weren't even their military ships, just what they called border patrol cutters. They escorted us to the edge of their territory while their engineers helped restore minimal functionality to our ships. Supreme Counselor Zorix leaned forward. And during this escort, did you learn anything more about their capabilities? Vax laughed, a harsh sound through his breathing apparatus. Learn? Yes, Counselor, I learned. I learned that the humans were genuinely surprised their locust worked so efficiently. I learned that what we encountered was their automated defense system, not their actual military response. I learned that they had been preparing for a species like us for decades. And the alleged situation at our central worlds? Another counselor asked. Not alleged, Vax replied grimly. While we were engaging their automated defenses, human infiltration teams had already disabled our quantum communication network across 27 systems. They introduced self-replicating bureaucratic subroutines into our central governance systems. Bureaucratic what? Paperwork, Counselor. Digital paperwork. Every military request now requires 17 levels of approval, documentation in triplicate, and mysteriously gets lost in the system before completion. Our mighty empire paralyzed not by weapons but by administrative red tape. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. How? Zorix finally asked. How did they know so much about us? How were they so prepared? Vax's mouth tentacles curled in what might have been a sad smile. One of their officers told me, quite casually, that for every scout ship we sent to observe them, they sent 10 unmarked vessels to observe us. Every transmission we thought was secure. They were listening to every weakness in our systems. They had already mapped. He paused, looking around at the council members. They have a saying on Earth, speak softly and carry a big stick. We never saw the stick until it was too late. And now, Zorix pressed. What are their demands? That's the most remarkable part, Vax replied. They have no demands beyond our withdrawal from their space. No reparations, no surrendered technology, no territorial concessions beyond what was already theirs. They simply want to be left alone. You can't possibly believe that, scoffed a counselor from the far side of the chamber. No species achieves military superiority without using it for expansion. Vax turned toward the skeptical voice. The human who spoke with me, Major Lori Torres was her name. She said something I have been pondering ever since. She said, we don't want your worlds or your resources. We have seen what empires like yours become. We are not interested in following that path. The commander straightened, his testimony clearly nearing its conclusion. The humans don't seek conquest, counselors. They seek to be left in peace, and they have demonstrated quite thoroughly that they have the means to ensure that peace. My recommendation is that we respect their wishes. Supreme Counselor Zorix conferred briefly with the others before addressing Vax again. And if we don't, if the Dominion were to send an even larger force, Rex's breathing apparatus wheezed as he let out what might have been a sigh. The human major asked me to relay a message if that very question arose. He pulled out a small recording device. With your permission? Zorix nodded. Vax activated the device, and a human female voice filled the chamber. To the esteemed Galactic Council. If you are hearing this message, it means you are contemplating another attempt at military action against Earth or its colonies. Before you make that decision, you should know what your fleet encountered was our automated defense system, operating at reduced capacity to minimize casualties. It represents less than 3% of our actual military capability. There was a pause in the recording. We have no desire for war, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves with the full extent of our capabilities, if forced. The choice, as always, is yours. We hope it's a peaceful one. As the recording ended, Vax looked around at the silent council chamber. They called it their greatest fleet, he said quietly. We called it target practice. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent for several moments after Commander Vax's testimony concluded. The weight of his words hung in the air like a toxic gas cloud on an uninhabitable moon. Supreme Counselor Zorix finally broke the silence. Thank you for your candid account, Commander. The Council will deliberate on this matter in private. As the chamber began to clear, Vax was approached by Counselor Telix, an ancient member of the Meridian species whose whiskers twitched with barely contained curiosity. Commander, Telex whispered, off the record, was there more? Something you didn't share with the full council? Vax glanced around before responding, yes, but I doubt they would believe it. I barely believe it myself. Try me, Telex said. My species has survived 12 galactic conflicts. Very little surprises me anymore. Vax hesitated, then nodded toward a secluded alcove away from the departing council members. What I didn't tell them was what happened after. When the humans invited me to visit Earth, Telex's tiny eyes widened. You have been to their home world? How did that come about? That human officer I mentioned, Major Torres, she approached me as we were preparing to limp home with our damaged fleet. Said her superiors wanted to open a dialogue with someone who could provide a first-hand account of Dominion society. Vex's mouth tentacles curled in what might have been embarrassment. I think they recognized I was less committed to the conquest ideology than Admiral Duzak. And you agreed? Just like that? What choice did I have? Our fleet was crippled. Besides, I was curious. Vex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Wouldn't you 3 solar cycles earlier, aboard the human transport vessel Olive Branch? You seem tense, Commander Vax, Major Lori Torres observed as she entered the guest quarters where I had been installed. Her uniform was simple, practical, with minimal ornamentation, nothing like the ostentatious displays of rank the Dominion favored. Considering I am the first Dominion officer to willingly enter human space without conquest as the objective, tension seems appropriate, I replied, adjusting my breathing apparatus. The human ship's atmosphere was compatible with my physiology, but only just. Torres smiled, that strange facial contortion humans use to indicate amusement or goodwill. Fair enough. But I assure you, you are not a prisoner. Think of yourself as a cultural attaché. Is that what your superiors call it? Actually, they called it making friends with the squid guy. She paused, then quickly added, no offense intended. Despite myself, I felt my mouth tentacles relax slightly. None taken. Your species' directness is refreshing. In the Dominion, such forthrightness would be considered tactically disadvantageous. Yeah, we have noticed that about you folks. Torres gestured toward the viewport. We are approaching Earth now if you'd like to see it. I moved to the viewport, unsure what to expect. The Dominion briefings had described Earth as resource-rich but unremarkable. Just another world ripe for integration into our empire. What I saw instead took my breath away. Earth hung in space like a jewel, blue and green and swirled with white clouds, but surrounding it was a complex web of structures, orbital platforms, defense arrays, and countless vessels moving in coordinated patterns. Impressive, isn't it? Torres said, standing beside me. Over 100 years of space development. Not bad for a primitive species, huh? This is not what our intelligence reported, I admitted. Of course not. What you are seeing is what we call the public layer. What we don't mind visitors observing. She pointed to various structures, civilian habitats, commercial shipping, scientific research stations, and the military installations. Torres grinned. Much less visible. Trust me, they are there. A voice came over the ship's communication system. Major Torres, we have received clearance for orbital insertion, ETA to Armstrong Station. 15 minutes. Thank you, Captain, Torres replied. She turned to me. Ready for your grand tour? I stared at the approaching planet. Do I have a choice? Always, she said, her tone suddenly serious. That's something you'll learn about humans, Commander. We are big on choices. The next 3 days were educational. Armstrong Station, a massive orbital habitat housing over 50,000 humans, served as my introduction to human society. Torres acted as my guide, explaining their customs, governance structures, and daily life. Your people live so chaotically, I observed, as we walked through a bustling market area. Humans of all shapes, sizes, and colors moved around us, some giving me curious glances but most going about their business. No uniform purpose, no central direction. We call it freedom, Torres replied, each pursuing their own happiness in their own way. But how do you maintain order? How do you accomplish grand projects without unified control? She led me to a viewport overlooking Earth. See that? We built all this without a central hive mind or authoritarian control, Turns out people work pretty hard when they are building something they believe in rather than something they are ordered to build. The Dominion teaches that such systems are inefficient, prone to collapse. And yet here we are, Torres said with that enigmatic smile, while your greatest fleet drifts home in disgrace. I couldn't argue with that. On the second day, Torres introduced me to what she called their civilian leadership, not military commanders, but elected officials who answered to their population. You are telling me your military answers to civilians? I asked, incredulous. President Miguel Ortega, a small man with gray hair and kind eyes, chuckled. That's precisely what makes us different from the Dominion, Commander Vax. Our military exists to protect our people, not to rule them. But surely in crisis situations, military control is necessary. We have found the opposite to be true, Ortega said. Our greatest strengths emerge from diverse perspectives working together, not from singular control. By the third day, I had begun to understand why our intelligence on humans had been so fatally flawed. We had studied their technology, their resources, their military capabilities, all from a distance, but we had fundamentally misunderstood their society, their values, their way of thinking. And that brought me to the most perplexing question of all. Why show me all this? I asked Torres, as we stood in a memorial park on Earth's surface, my first time setting foot on the actual planet. The park commemorated something called World War II, apparently a massive conflict between human factions centuries earlier. What do you mean? Torres asked, though I suspected she knew exactly what I was asking. Why reveal your defenses, your society, your strengths and weaknesses? I am still a Dominion officer. This is valuable intelligence. Torres sat on a bench, gesturing for me to join her. After a moment's hesitation, I did. 2 reasons, she said. First, everything I have shown you is, as I mentioned, the public layer. We are not fools, Commander. And the second reason? We are hoping you'll go back and tell the truth, that attempting to conquer Earth would be not just difficult, but pointless. I considered this. You want me as a peace advocate? Something like that. Look around you. She gestured at the peaceful park, the humans going about their day. Do these look like people yearning to be liberated by the Dominion, to have your way of life imposed on them? The Dominion doesn't concern itself with the desires of conquered species, I said automatically, reciting the doctrine I'd been taught since youth. And how's that working out for you? Torres asked with a raised eyebrow. Before I could respond, my attention was drawn to a small group approaching us. A human female accompanied by 4 small humans, children. I realized. Major Torres. The adult called out, "Is this the visitor you mentioned to my class?" Torres stood, smiling. Professor Patel, yes. Commander Vax, this is Professor Amara Patel. She teaches at the local school. The professor looked at me with open curiosity rather than fear. Commander, my students have been learning about extraterrestrial civilizations. Would you mind if they asked you a few questions? I looked at the small humans, who stared back with wide eyes. I suppose that would be acceptable. What followed was the most bewildering hour of my life. The children, ranging in age from what Torres later told me was 8 to 10 Earth years, bombarded me with questions. How many hearts do you have? Do you have pets on your planet? Is it true your species can regrow limbs? Do you like ice cream? I answered as best I could, finding myself unexpectedly engaged by their unfiltered curiosity. There was no fear in their questions, no hostility, just genuine interest. As the impromptu session concluded, one of the smallest children approached me directly. "Mr. Alien, sir," she said solemnly, "my daddy says your people wanted to hurt us. Is that true?" The directness of the question stunned me into silence. I looked at Torres, who watched impassively, offering no assistance. I knelt to better address the small human. My people believed that our way was best for everyone. We were wrong. The child considered this, then nodded. My mommy says people make mistakes sometimes, but you can say sorry and try to do better. With that simple statement, she rejoined her classmates, leaving me speechless. Professor Patel thanked me for my time and the group departed, the children waving enthusiastically as they left. You handled that well, Torres said as we watched them go. They are not afraid, I observed. Even knowing what my people attempted, kids are pretty resilient, and they haven't learned to hate yet. Torres turned to me. That's the real reason we brought you here, Commander. Not to intimidate you with our technology or our military might, but to show you what you'd be destroying. For the first time since arriving on Earth, I truly understood. You expect me to believe, Counselor Telix said, interrupting my account, that exposure to human children changed your perspective on the Dominion's conquest directive. We were still standing in the alcove, away from the main council chamber. I could see the skepticism in his posture. Not just the children, I clarified. Everything I saw. Their society functions differently than ours, yes. But it functions, they value individual freedom, diversity of thought, cooperation over coercion, and they have built a civilization that can bring our greatest fleet to its knees without firing a single conventional weapon. And yet you say they have no interest in conquest. That's what makes them truly dangerous, Counselor. They don't want our worlds or our resources. They just want to be left alone. And they have the means to ensure that happens. Telix's whiskers twitched thoughtfully. What happened after your educational visit? They returned me to what remained of our fleet. I submitted my report to High Command, including my recommendation that we formally recognize human territory as sovereign and independent. I imagine that went over well, Telix said dryly. I let out a bitter laugh. About as well as you'd expect. I was immediately relieved of duty and would have been executed for treason if not for the ongoing administrative difficulties throughout our systems. Their bureaucratic virus. Yes, turns out it's quite difficult to process execution orders when the paperwork keeps getting lost between departments. Telix considered this information, his ancient eyes calculating. And now, what is the current state of affairs with the humans? A standoff. The Dominion military is paralyzed by the administrative virus, which will take months, possibly years, to purge completely. Our quantum communication network is slowly being rebuilt. Meanwhile, human representatives have approached several of our former subject worlds, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. They are building alliances, Telix said, alarm evident in his voice. Defensive ones. Yes, they are creating a buffer zone. Not through conquest, but through mutual interest. The Counselor's whiskers drooped slightly. The Council will never accept this. They'll vote for a massive retaliation once our systems are restored. Then they will fail even more spectacularly than before, I said with certainty. The humans showed me only what they wanted me to see, but it was enough. They have been preparing for species like us for decades. What we encountered was their equivalent of a burglar alarm, not their actual defenses. Telix sighed. I will bring your additional insights to the closed session, though I doubt it will change many minds. There's one more thing you should know, Counselor. I hesitated, then continued. Before I left Earth, Major Torres gave me something. A data storage device containing what she called a contingency plan. What kind of contingency plan? A roadmap for reforming the Dominion. Economic models, governance structures, transition plans, all designed to help transform our empire from a conquering force into a cooperative federation. Models based on their own history. Telix stared at me. You are suggesting we adopt human systems. Become like them. I'm suggesting we learn from them. They have made every mistake we are making now, fought wars we can't imagine, nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, and they have found a better way. And if we refuse? I met his gaze steadily. Then we will continue to decline, while they and their allies grow stronger. The age of the Dominion is ending, Counselor. The only question is whether we end with it or evolve. 2 lunar cycles later, I stood on the observation deck of orbital platform Sigma, watching as a small human vessel docked with the station. It had been a chaotic time since my testimony to the Council. Factions had formed, with some calling for immediate war preparations and others advocating for a more cautious approach. In the midst of this turmoil, I had sent a message to Earth, a request for dialogue, not between military forces or governments, but between peoples. The airlock cycled open and a familiar figure stepped through. Commander Vex, Major Torres, said with a smile, or should I say diplomatic liaison Vex now. Congratulations on the new position. Thank you, Major, I replied, though many in the Dominion consider it a demotion rather than an honor. Give them time, she said. Change doesn't happen overnight. I gestured to the viewport, where the vast sprawl of the Dominion capital world was visible below. The Reform faction is gaining support, slowly but steadily. Your contingency plan has been persuasive to those willing to listen. And those who aren't willing, or finding their administrative difficulties surprisingly persistent, I said with what humans would recognize as a wry smile. Torres laughed. Funny how that works. She grew more serious. The diplomatic team is ready when you are. President Ortega sends his regards. There will be resistance. I warned, many still view humans as enemies, or at best upstarts who need to be put in their place. We are counting on you to help change that perception, Torres said. You have seen both sides now. You understand what's at stake. I nodded, looking out at the stars. When I was a cadet, they taught us that the Dominion's destiny was to rule the galaxy, that all other species were either threats to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. And now I wonder if our destiny might be something else entirely, something we could never have imagined before encountering humanity. What's that? Torres asked. To become better than we are, I replied simply. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's the thing about humans, Commander. We are never satisfied with what we are. We are always reaching for what we could be. A dangerous quality, I observed. The most dangerous, she agreed with a smile. And the most hopeful. As we turned to walk toward the conference room where representatives from both civilizations waited, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here, from a loyal Dominion officer to a voice for reform and peaceful coexistence. All because a fleet of 7,000 warships had encountered something they never expected, a species that had turned defense into an art form, that had prepared for threats they hadn't yet met, that had learned from their own bloody history how to build something better. They had called it their greatest fleet. The humans had called it target practice. And in doing so, they may have saved not just themselves, but the Dominion as well. As we entered the conference room, I noticed something unusual. The human delegation and the Dominion representatives weren't seated on opposite sides of the table as protocol would dictate. Instead, they were mingled together, already engaged in conversation. Your idea? I asked Torres quietly. She shook her head. Actually, it was Supreme Counselor Zorix who suggested it, said something about new paradigms requiring new seating arrangements. I spotted Zorix deep in conversation with a human diplomat, his usually stern features animated with genuine interest. Looks like your testimony made an impression after all. Torres commented. Perhaps, I said cautiously, or perhaps the Dominion is finally learning what humans seem to have known all along. What's that? I gestured to the diverse gathering, former enemies now engaged in dialogue, that the greatest conquest isn't taking new territory. It's overcoming your own limitations. Torres smiled. Now you are thinking like a human. I'll take that as a compliment, I replied, and for the first time since our worlds collided, I truly meant it. We joined the gathering, stepping not into battle but into possibility. The war that never was had ended. What would come next was uncharted territory for both our peoples. For the Dominion, it was the end of an era. For humanity, it was just another day of proving that the best defense isn't always a good offense. Sometimes, it's making your would-be conquerors reconsider not just their tactics, but their entire worldview. And if that fails, well, there's always those swarms of weaponized nanomachines, just in case.